Hello, everyone. Pastor Winston here. We're continuing our study in the Sermon on the Mount. It seems like every week we find all these good new jewels in them and everything, and Jesus has something really good for us today. So we're in Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 through 23, and we're going to take a look at those. And so I'm going to decrease myself here so he might increase. We're looking at the Sermon on the Mount. The Two Doers has a lot to say for us, and it's really a phenomenal verse here. It really convicts me to no end and afflicts me to no end. Jesus says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do mighty works in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'" Well, those are really strong words. You know, what he's after here is he's really saying there's two kind of doers here. There's people that prophesy or they teach and we see them in our midst. They're people that have huge ministries and they do very well, but they don't practice the will of our Lord. They're not seeking it in their daily life. And those are the ones that Jesus is saying, "Hey, look, I never knew you." And there's those that perhaps, do miracles. And they also do healing in many ways. And I think the catch of this is that they become so full of their own significance that they forget about Jesus and God, and they begin to think that they possess these gifts. They're not just something that's granted by God, but they possess the ability to do it, and everybody else is lost without it. I remember I was at a Christian booksellers convention, and my daughter was with me, and we heard this guy that had just published a couple books, and they sold millions of copies, and it was wonderful, and all that. And he got up, and we were excited to hear him speak, and he just talked about the whole time about how great he was, and everything that he did, and how little we were doing, and why weren't we, doing what he's doing, and all that kind of thing, and that he was going to have all these great rewards in heaven, and we weren't going to have any. And my daughter turned to me and she says, "Oh, Dad, I guess there's no hope for me." And I said, "No, that's not true." She was crying. And so we walked out. And I think that exemplifies where Jesus is going with this, is to say, if you're so full of yourself and you're the Almighty, it's almost like you're worshiping yourself in a way instead of doing the will of the Father. And so, the Apostle Paul, he wrote some stuff about this. I want to switch over to that. I'm going to take a look at that slide for a second and see what Paul had to say about it. He said, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but have not love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge and have all faith so as to move mountains but have not love, I am nothing. I mean, that is pretty powerful about love. Is it love? Jesus is after us to seek him with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, is to seek after him, not after doctrine, not after all these other things, but to seek Jesus and who he is, and get to know him in our own soul. And by doing that, we want to do what he commands us or challenges us with. So we sort of need to ask the question in these situations. We have to say, are there any of the Beatitudes in this person's speech? Is there a poverty of spirit? Is there a mourning or a meekness or a hungering and thirsting for righteousness? Is there any of that happening? Is there forgiveness being displayed? what is really happening in this ministry? And so we need to think on those things. We need to think about that for our own self. I'm not just pointing at people, I'm pointing at myself too. That we need to think about these things and say, how's this going with me? You know, so I thought for us to reflect on that, brings up that question, well, what is the will of God? Because I want to be in the will. And it is just some starters, the reverence for the scriptures, the miracle of casting out one's anger, of performing miracles of sexual purity and marital fidelity, a heart that extends itself even to persecutors and enemies. This is the will of God. And there's more. So this is where I sort of challenge you to read chapters 5 and chapter 6 again in the Sermon on the Mount. Thinking of this verse in particular as you go through the week. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do mighty works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. So do it. Chapter 5, chapter 6. Keep this verse handy and just say, Lord, help me to do these things. I want to be in your will. I want to trust you. I want to know Christ and the power of the resurrection. I want to have a share in the sufferings of Christ, even if it leads to death. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you soon.